All right, all right, all right. We are keeping the tour, the powerful virtual tour rolling. It's going. We've got a special guest for you today. What we're doing with MYB Publishing is we are bringing to the forefront the proper platform for an all-time classic called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. We have completely taken this to another level by creating a special universal edition. We wanted to be able to have this powerhouse work to be accepted and recognized globally. So we did the key edits to the book to make sure it reaches across all walks of life, no matter where you're at in the entire world, male, female, children, grandparents, the whole nine can be able to relate and really get some great content from this book to impact your life. And we've got a special guest with us here today that I wanted to take some time to interview. What we did was we put together a special VIP group, some people that are very, very influential, that's had some stellar careers, that we know that personal growth is so important to them. We wanted them to preview a very special file of this book before it's released. So we'll do the official launch on the 15th. But over the past several weeks, we've been able to have a special group of people go through, read the book in its special universal edition mode. And we wanted to bring them on so that you could hear from them. So I'm doing interviews all over the place, but I'm also going to be interviewing folks over the next couple of weeks. And I want all of you to be able to embrace this, to share this, all these multiple platforms that we're going live on now, all the rebroadcasts. Make sure you share this because it's going to impact other people. So I've got our special guest here today, Mr. J. Paul Nadeau. He is a negotiations expert. Now, this is unique because very few times you get an opportunity to meet someone like Paul, because he's typically doing things behind the scene that nobody else really wants to do. Let's talk about his career a little bit. He's a negotiation expert and a conflict resolution keynote speaker, a highly decorated former police officer who had an exemplary career of over 30 years. Nadeau specialized in hostage and crisis negotiations, homicide investigations, interrogations, polygraph testing, and counter-terrorism. He's been a regular guest on CNN, CBC, Global News, and CP24, and he's bringing his talents, his voice, his energy, his passion to you today, all the way from Toronto, Canada. I want to introduce you to J. Paul Nadeau. Paul, welcome to our broadcast. Welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much, Jay, and hello to everyone out there. You're in for a great interview, and I'm sure you're in for a great book. Once this book is released, it's going to make a significant impact in your life. I guarantee it. Thanks, Jay, for having me on the show.
Wonderful. I tell you what, we picked you because of your background And we knew because of the intellect and your ability to be able to communicate with other people, we wanted to get your insight on this book. So the physical copy here, we'll be releasing the ebook first. Paul's been able to read the ebook. So Paul, what was your initial reaction? I mean, had you read The Science of Getting Rich before? What is your background, your knowledge in regards to Wallace D. Wattles and The Science of Getting Rich, Paul?
Well, before this book was offered to me by you and Lena, I had no idea about it. Once I read it, though, the impressions I got is that Wallace D. Wattles is right on the money. When we talk about this, he really puts an emphasis on the belief that you have in yourself and the belief that you have that riches are already yours. It's an unwavering mindset. And I love this kind of material because it reminds us that unless we truly believe that we can get these things, then we're not going to. And he talks about the importance of the belief, for one, the faith, and so many other nuggets of information that just resonate with me right now. And it's an incredibly good book.
You know, Paul, there's so many people out there, kind of like you. I've been in personal growth for, over a quarter of a century. How long have you been involved with personal growth and that being a part of your life, Paul?
It's been 20 years for me in personal growth. I just love reading and listening to great content and then making things happen. Because one of the things that Wallace mentions in his book too is that it's not enough to believe in these things. We need to follow that through with action and make a change in our lives. And what I see, Jay, are so many people that wish they had a certain thing, but they're not ready to do the work. And in Wallace's great work, he talks about the importance of belief, of having that faith, but also of taking the necessary action and never, ever giving up. I love that. This is the kind of stuff that I feed on.
It's got to be, having your career. Let's talk about your background real quick before we jump into the book. I mean, talking about a decorated police officer over 30 years, you had a very, very, I would say it's not a lot of people that are, hostage negotiators and dealing with counterterrorism. You dealt with some high level, intense, stressful situations. What led you into that career, Paul? I know everybody would like to know a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to go back into my past when I was a child. And this is where it originated because my father, bless his soul, was a very tortured man. He was a very violent alcoholic who used to beat my mother, my brother, and myself. And we lived in fear. And I remember when I was about 7 years old, after a beating from my father, I remember looking up at him and in my mind saying to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to be a policeman so I can arrest people like you. And it happened that when I was 17, he took his own life, but I still had that mindset of becoming that police officer to help others. The one thing that sometimes when we look back at our past and we see the things that happened to us, we also realize that they also happened for us. And what my father inadvertently did is that when he sent me out to work at 13 years old and bring in a paycheck for him, he was teaching me how to negotiate with adults, people much older than myself. I really had to fend for myself and get several jobs. So later, when I joined the police department, I had the ability to really communicate well with people. And I quickly made my way into the detective office, into the special victims unit, where I found so much reward in the work that I was doing. And then eventually an opportunity came up to become a hostage negotiator. And I said, you know what? That's a cool job. That's a sexy job. I think I want that. And I went out for it. I went through a battery of tests through the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who make the final decision, and they selected me. So over the years, the things that have happened to me in the past have actually served me in the future and still do to this day.
Man, what a amazing! I'm sure you've been in some hairy situations, and being able to utilize a strong mental capacity to handle these, to be able to stay cool under pressure. One of the reasons why I love this book, The Science of Getting Rich, is because a lot of those key attributes that you had to utilize in being who you were, people, they don't usually get that training. You probably had to go through some serious specialized training, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Months and months of training. And the wonderful thing about the hostage negotiations is that although we took several months of training before we were qualified to become negotiators, we also, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we had these live scenarios in which we had fire department there, the police department, professional actors, and we would role play every 2 or 3 weeks just to keep up with our skills, because it's so important. In negotiations, for example, in business negotiations, we know the kind of negotiations we're going into, so we can prepare for them. But when you're a hostage negotiator, it's not like the bad guy who picks up the phone and says, yeah, hi, police department. In 2 weeks from now, I'm going to commit a robbery, but it's going to go really bad. So if you guys want to come over, I'll be at X29 Smith Street. That doesn't happen that way. So we have to be given these scenarios and practice them so that when it does happen, we say, okay, I've been here before. And I think that that's one of the things that Wallace talks about, is just being so familiar with who you are and that mindset. Just, okay, I'm ready for this. No matter what comes my way, I've got it.
You know, in chapter 4, I've got the book here, and over in chapter 4, you know, it starts out, Paul, and I'd love to be able to get your thoughts as I read some of this to our viewers. In chapter 4, it says the first principle in the science of getting rich. So it starts in chapter 4. It says thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in this substance produces the form. So when you hear that, Paul, that thought is the only power that can produce tangible riches and create changes in people's lives, what is your take on when Wallace is talking about that particular sentence there in those paragraphs?
I love that sentence. When I first read it, it made an impact on me because it is so very true. Unless we create the thought, we can never create the action that follows. The thought is what matters, and it is the quality of the thought that matters, how rich it resonates with you. So he's absolutely right. Without thought, you will never get to the matter. And I love the way he put that.
You know what's amazing about that he hammers, and I was listening to the audiobook, which we have the audiobook will be coming out later, and you'll be involved in the VIP, and that is also the VIP experience, is that he hammers down, doubles, triples, and quadruples down on there's one substance from which all things are made, are created, and that one substance is happening here today. What's your thought on that, being that monistic thing, that every single thing that we see, who we are, all comes from one source, which means we have the ability to continue to plug into that source and create the life that we want. What's your take on that, Paul?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, my take on that would be this, is that we are such incredible and capable human beings with these vibrations. And as long as we are open vessels to receiving information and to creating the thoughts that we want to empower us in our lives, then we can actually accomplish just about anything in this world. We are limitless. It's the vibrations that we put out that will be brought back to us in kind. So throughout the book, he talks about if you falter on the belief and vibrations that you're sending out, you're not going to receive what it is that you deserve. And he talks about the fact that we deserve these things. And if we believe in that, and we believe in our unfaltering power, then there's nothing we can't accomplish. And I truly believe that. I hope that that's answered your question, Jay.
That's a beautiful answer. Wallace goes on to say here on page 59 of the book, I want to get your take on this. He says, a person's way of doing things is the direct result of the way that they think about things. To do things in a way that you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step towards getting rich. I would love to get Paul Nadeau's take on being able to think the way you want to think. Because you're a high performance coach now. I mean, you talk to people all over the place. You know, that's got to be some challenges of how people are dealing with their thoughts. What do you got to say, Paul, about to think the way you want to think? What does that say and speak to you?
Oh, wow, Jay. All right. That's a loaded question. You got 2 hours? I can talk for a full day on this topic. All right. All right. Well, we all experience saboteurs, and I'm going to be talking from a hostage negotiator's kind of perspective on it, is that we will oftentimes get these thoughts in our mind that challenge who we are and what we're capable of. We all get those little voices in our head that tell us that we can't accomplish anything, that we can't possibly do it, so why should we even try? The thing is that when we control our thoughts, which is where this is going, we can negotiate those thoughts out and just say, hey, you have no place in my brain. I am going to create my best thoughts, and I am going to continue to create my best thoughts, because only then will I get the things that I deserve in life. And everything really comes down to the quality of your thoughts and the actions that you take as a result of the quality of those thoughts. So you keep on building. And this is why personal development is so important. And reading a book like this one is so important, is that we fill our minds with these great thoughts that we can then use to develop and create the life that we deserve to live. We all deserve this, Jay.
Oh, man. See, are you reading my mind right now? Because chapter 1 says the right to be rich. And Paul just said, we deserve, so speak to the folks out there right now from your expertise background about the right. You said we deserve this. And Wallace Wattles in the first chapter says the right to be rich, which is in line. What made you say that with the heart and the passion that you just said that?
Well, because I really believe it, Jay. It's been something that has been on my heart and my soul for so long. We are all born equal. There's one race, the human race, and everybody is put in a place, but with every ability to influence their space. There's no one that is above any other person, or no one who cannot achieve like any other person. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter your background. We can all create that life. We can all bring the good things into our lives. And what it takes is for us to recognize that nobody deserves the very best, to be rich more than you. Nobody deserves it more than you. You deserve as much as every other person. And depending on what you say to yourself and what you do as a result of what you say to yourself, that's going to make the difference. So everybody deserves riches, love, respect, honor. Everybody deserves it. And it's our job. It really is our job as human beings to go on out there and get it, because we deserve it. It's our right as human beings. God placed us on this earth, and he created us equal, and he gave us every equal opportunity. We just have to, some of us have to fight a little harder for it, but we're all deserving of it. And I love that.
I think, this really, rings in my heart, especially when you talk about your background of what you went through at around 7. You and I have that in common. My dad shot himself when I was 7. He lived through it. Your dad, a few years later, didn't live through that. But my dad had that intention in his mind when he did it. And so from 0 to 7, the great philosopher Aristotle says, give me a child until they're 7, I'll show you the adult. And so here's you and people like you and I, and there's a lot of people that are listening to us, they went through these significant traumas. And so, Paul, what have you been able to do, and how do you think this book will be able to help people overcome some of those traumas? I'd love to get your take on that.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for that wonderful question, because I look at it this way. We all have choice. That 6 letter word choice means so much. We can choose to live in the past with the things, or to live in poverty. And we can choose to live there, or we can choose to live in the past regrets or the things that have happened to us, or we can choose to look back at that and say, no, that is not who I was. And although that happened to me, I'm going to create it to happen for me, because I'm going to be stronger as a result of the circumstances and the things that I've gone through life. And when you have that faith, and even just looking back and saying, all right, that did happen, but I am greater than my circumstances. And now my mindset is one that I want to focus on to create the best life, the happiest life for myself. My past does not determine my future. What determines my future is me, the thoughts that I entertain, the actions that I take, and nobody can make you feel inferior. Nobody can change any of that unless you allow them to. Nobody can hurt your feelings. It's all up to us. It's a choice. If somebody tells you something that's very, very hurtful, you get to choose whether or not it hurts you or not. It's up to you. And it's up to you to go on out there and get rich by the thoughts that you entertain and the actions that you take.
Right. I'm loving this session. I know that everybody that's listening to this, what a special treat having someone like Paul and his background. And I can feel your passion and your love, Paul. That's what I love about it. But I think what we want to do now is just do some more work to help some folks here from an expert's perspective like yourself. Guilt. So we talked about, deserving it, but how does a person get over the guilt? I know you do a lot about self-sabotage, and again, this has been programmed, in my opinion. People have been programmed to sabotage, and then we walk around in all this guilt. How are you able to utilize powerhouse principles like that are found in this book to help people to get over that guilty conscience, Paul?
Okay, and a beautiful question once again. I love this conversation. When we're born, we are born, well, our life is empty and meaningless. And what I mean by that is that we are these vessels, and nothing has happened to us yet, and nothing, no thoughts have come in. We're just children, and life is empty and meaningless, and until things happen that we then decide and attach a meaning to it, because we're meaning-making machines. When something happens, we try to attach a meaning to it. You touched on this earlier too, is that a lot of things that happened to the people in the past, it's kind of forced that you're going to think this way. We have to challenge that. We have to challenge that. No, I don't have to listen to or feel this way because you say so. I have the choice to create my circumstances and to believe what I choose to believe. Now, here about the guilt part is that we have to remember we are perfect human beings, but we're imperfect people because of some of the things that we do and say and think or whatever. And we're living in an imperfect world. We're not always going to do things right. There are things that we're going to do that we look back at, and as you said, it creates this regret, this I should have, this feeling that you just can't get over it. We have to release ourselves of that. We have to look back and we have to forgive ourselves. Why? Because we're not the people that we were back then. I'm not the man that I was 6 months ago. I'm standing on the shoulders of that man. I have grown from that person because the mistakes that I've made, I recognize them and I realize that I had to modify my behavior. And maybe I have to go back to somebody and apologize for the things that I've said, the things that I've done. But I also have to release myself from that guilt because I'm not that person. If you're still that person, then you're going to feel that guilt. But if you look back and you say, I have learned and I am stronger and I am standing on the shoulders of the person I once was, then you get to release yourself from that guilt and just create that life that, and again, what Wallace talks about is putting those thoughts in your head that are going to be meaningful and that are going to take you to where you want to be. So guilt is something that we can release ourselves from as long as we are standing on the shoulders of the person that once did the action.
Wow. Woo! This is hot, man. I'm loving this interview and this conversation. See, Paul and I, we're like brothers here, just sitting down. We're inviting everybody over to a conversation, just listening in. How do we change? How do we get better? It's through words, it's through energy, it's putting in the time. We appreciate everyone being here today, getting this knowledge. This book has changed my life again. It's helped me understand some things. And I want to be able to get Paul's input on this. It's helped me be able to clarify some things that I have been thinking about over all this quarter plus century that I've been involved in personal growth, training people. I've put my feet on 20 plus countries around the world, done business in 90 countries, and I've been able to meet so many people. But what Paul said about this thing about guilt is critical. So Wallace Wattles over in chapter 10, he talks about the further use of the will. And Paul, this is deep here. When he talks about here, I'm going to go over to page 131 of the book. It says, you must learn to see the underlying truth, all capital truth, in all things. You must see beneath all seemingly wrong conditions. That's what Paul's talking about. He says, the great one life ever moving forward towards fuller expression and more complete happiness. It is the truth that there is no such thing as poverty, that there is only wealth. Paul, what do you think about Wallace Wattles bringing it here? He said there is no such thing as poverty. There is only wealth. So I want to get your take on it because that's a bold statement, Paul.
That is a bold statement, and we can choose to look at it in several different ways. One of the way when I read that, I read that in the thought that I am surrounded by wealth, and I am surrounded because it isn't only materialistic that creates the wealth in our life. The gold and the jewels or whatever are in the relationships that we have, in the experience or the thoughts that we entertain. We are surrounded by so many riches, and we are at times our own worst enemies because we don't see the beauty around us. We don't take the time. And he talks about this. He talks about the importance of gratitude and of non-competition with anybody. You are in competition with one person and one person only, and that's you. And you get to build on your riches and see the riches around you. And if you don't see that, you're going to live a miserable life because there's so much beauty and love and things to be grateful for around you. That's part of the riches. And I see that. That's what struck me in that passage, Jay.
Man, this is getting deep here, guys. As we begin to wind things down, I want to bring this final point home to our special guest, Mr. Paul Nadeau. J. Paul Nadeau, one of the most powerhouse men you're going to meet. He's intentional. I love this conversation. Chapter 12 talks about efficient action. Paul is a man of action. I've watched him over the past year. I've seen your consistency. Wallace Wattles says, you must use your thoughts as directed in previous chapters and begin to do what you can do where you are. And you must do all that you can do where you are. You can advance only by being larger than your present place. And no person is larger than their present place who leaves undone any work pertaining to that place. So he's talking here, Paul, about in order to get more, you got to fill up where you're at now. I'd love to get your parting thoughts on this particular passage from Wallace Wattles.
Oh, wow. You struck a nerve with me there, my friend. When we all went into lockdown during COVID, I remember thinking to myself, all right, now what do I do? And what I did was I wrote 2 books. I worked on a film script. I kept myself healthy. I worked out. And then after a few months of this, I went to Facebook, social media, and I said, COVID crazy or COVID creative, which are you? And overwhelmingly, the responses to that post were COVID crazy. People didn't know what to do with themselves. We are challenged to be creative. We are challenged to work hard. This is an opportunity. It is our opportunity to take as many risks as we possibly can. It's almost like grabbing spaghetti, throwing it on the wall, and seeing what sticks. Are you a writer? Are you a singer? Are you an athlete? If you don't take the action to try these things, you'll never know. I didn't realize that I would become an author until I wrote a book. And then I wrote another book and another book. So here's the thing that we must do is that we must not remain idle. We must look at all the opportunities ahead of us and in front of us. And if they're not there, create them. Go on out and try something new. Take the action to change your life. This is what will bring you riches, is that if you don't try. Wayne Gretzky, Canadian hockey player, famous hockey player, said you always miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you don't try, you don't go on out there, you don't create your own business, you don't do anything, you're not going to get anything. It takes an unwavering mindset. One thing is that Waddle said was, there is never any time but now. And there will never be any time but now.
Man, oh man. I've been living. You just hit me all up in my chest. I spent this past week some close personal time with my dad, and I said that statement to him, Paul. I said, Dad, there is no other time but now. And my dad, he's 75 years old. He's doing his thing. He stopped and looked at me and said, what'd you say? I said, there is no other time but now. Here my brother Paul is saying and reinforcing it. What happens if we all embrace that powerful statement that Wallace Waddles is conveying to us, that there is no other time but now? You see, if I leave all of this past behind, the energy of it, and I just live in now, and I'm happy right now, and I'm enjoying this conversation with my brother Paul right now, and I'm not focused on anything else. Now I don't have any time to worry. I don't have any time to be afraid because I'm so consumed with now. And so, Paul, this book, The Science of Getting Rich, we want this in the hands of every single person around the world because I really believe it's going to change lives. So I would love to get your final words on as far as from a recommendation standpoint. You've read it, you got the inside, we're real and raw. What's your thoughts? You got people that are listening. Should they get it? Should they not get it? What will they get from it? In your opinion, love to hear what you got to say about that, Paul.
Oh, you got it. I think it should be in the hands of every person. It's filled with nuggets of truth and encouragement, and it really sets a mindset for you as long as you're ready to receive it. So when you read the book, have your mind open to what Wallace is saying. And it is a blueprint, really, on success. Because if you really consume it with an open mind, with the mind of a warrior, with the mind of I am deserving, then you will bring riches into your life, because you won't fall back into that past state of mind where you felt that you weren't worthy of it or it couldn't possibly happen to you. It challenges your mindset. It asks you to live in this moment. And I truly believe that it's so very important because we get to choose what we say, what we do, how we feel in this moment. I'm with my brother Jay, and I'm just having such a great conversation with him. I'm living in this moment. I'm feeling free and strengthened and empowered. This book will do the same for you. Those are my thoughts on it, Jay.
Beautiful, beautiful. I feel the same. Go over to getsogr.com. That's that SOGR, Science of Getting Rich. Getsogr.com. You can get in on the pre-order of the book as we begin to roll this out, as we begin to continue to bring on special guests. I'm so honored to have someone like this powerhouse man, Mr. Paul Nadeau, today. You know, he's got a powerhouse book of his own that everybody needs to get their hands on. Take control of your life. See, when we start to put together these powerhouse books, The Science of Getting Rich, and then we take books like this, take control of your life from people that have been through things. You know, that's the one thing, Paul, as we wrap up here. Having people that's been through things that are still going, that are still smiling, that are still passionate, that are positive, that's the people you want to learn from. And that's why I love learning and enjoying the time I spend with you, Paul, because you've been through stuff. And look at you right now. You are a powerhouse walking every day. Thank goodness that you didn't listen to all those voices around you when you were coming up that wanted to take you out, and that we have the gift of you here today. I'm honored to spend this time with you, Paul. Thank you so much. Any parting words on your side?
Jay, I just want to thank you for bringing me on the show and for taking that book and making it into the book that it is today, because I know that it's going to reach so many souls. And our jobs, folks, is to help support one another through this thing called life. We need to reach out and take somebody's hand and say, I'm here for you. And this is what this book will do. It will empower you to feel your greatest and to help others as you grow rich. And I want to thank you for that. I absolutely love this conversation, and thank you for having me on.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Paul, again, all the way from Toronto, Canada. He brought the heat from up north. Man, we're excited. Everybody got an opportunity. Spread this around, share it with everybody. It's going to impact some lives. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone.